Thanks, everybody. I'm grateful to be here. I do not have a slide deck. The tools of my trade are an exceedingly old and very complicated story, a dinner table, and a set of knees. So I'm a bit of a Luddite. I started in the same way that Lori did by sort of polling my constituency of what a healthy community would look like, and what I found is that those answers were so diverse around what a healthy community looked like that I better define it for myself, just so you all know where I'm coming from. I would say a healthy community is a community where 51% or more would report that they are flourishing, and the vast majority would report that they experience a significant level of well-being. So that's the functional definition of healthy community that I will be looking at. And I should say, over the past 10 or 15 years, I've been asked a few times if I would conduct a preaching workshop. And I've always declined that. I decline it immediately, and people are like, whoa, wait, whoa, why are you saying no so quickly? And my response is usually because what you would get from me would be so weird that no one could make the connections. You know, I know what people expect from a preaching workshop is like, what is your process like? How long does it take you to write a sermon? What books that you read? But my preaching workshop would look something like, you know, get plenty of rest and wake up early. Make sure that you watch HBO. Listen to your kids' Spotify list, not your own. Read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal almost every day. So you're going to get a bit of that from me today when it comes to what I think adds to a healthy community and what we're missing. The first thing that I would say in regard to this conference is that I believe it's impossible for us to speak about the environment, the economy, and the community without having a sense that those three are integrated, that they're inseparable from one another. It is my strong belief that we cannot have a really healthy economy and an unhealthy community and a marginally healthy environment. I think those things have to move all together nearly in lockstep, supporting one another. There's also, in regard to the etymology of some of these words, when we look at that word economy and we look at the word community, they have the same root in the Greek, oikos. The economy comes from oikonomia. Community is koinonia. So there's this idea that there's a starting place for economy and community, most certainly environment, just meaning context here, but there's a starting place for economy and community, which is the steward, and then the unit is the household. So that's what I'm working from too. Typically, you know, my work would have me focus on both a particular congregation and maybe the community in which it sits, but I'm starting from both a personal and a community-based aspect. I'll start with some conventional ideas of what we would expect to be in a healthy economy. This is a list that I think for the most part, the majority of us would agree on the majority of the things that are here being ingredients, necessary, essential ingredients to healthy economy. Access to quality education for school-aged children. Dependable, high-quality childcare for working families. Meaningful work with reasonable hours and support, along with opportunities of advancement in the workplace or the profession. Access to quality health care that extends way, way beyond the physical. Access to reasonable and affordable forms of transportation and commute times. A robust and well-resourced service corps who lovingly extends aid to the temporarily or the permanently disempowered. Robustly supported by both public and private funds, a responsive and effective local government, access to affordable, secure, and permanent housing units, a dependable economic base with room for growth. Those are my sort of laundry list of conventional items that we would want, conventional essential items that we would want for a healthy community. Now here are some of the unconventional ones which will, most certainly make me sound weird. The first thing that I would recommend would be play and rest. I believe in order for us to experience flourishing, we need some measure of combination of play and rest. Now, I think we do play pretty well around here, though we could extend play to aspects of our community who have to just work to survive. And it was funny because Gary, I think it was you who said in the Q&A, you said the free market inspires creativity. And I was like, wait, no, it's play. It's play that inspires creativity. I'm sure it's a mixture of both, and I know those things are integrated one with another. To be sure, there is a shadow side to play, and we know and experience that here, whether it's that puer aeternus or Peter Pan syndrome, or if it's just that play that becomes so intense that it demands our full attention in life. One of the funny things that I've lived here for 6 years, and I remember when I got to 5, I was like, oh, thank God I got to the unit of 5. Finally, people who have lived here 4 years and shorter will have to listen to me. I've lived here for 6 years. One of the things that happened to me almost immediately when I moved to Jackson is I would get a phone call at like 11:15 on a Tuesday. And it would be someone I know, maybe someone who I was beginning to create a friendship with. It was, January 21st, and they would say, hey, Jimmy, hey, it's Trey. What's going on, man? Well, just sitting here in the office doing a little work. Hey, do you want to skin up Snow King at lunch? And I would say, no. And he'd be like, what's going on? Do you have like a meeting or something? And I would say, no meeting. I don't have the desire to skin up Snow King at lunch. That's just not in my competency area. I mean, I've climbed the Grand a few times with a guide, a few other mountain peaks, but I'm not going to skin up Snow King during lunch. So play can be quite intense around here, I think. To rest, I would say I don't think we have enough rest around here. Even the retired community here, I don't know if you know this, but even the retired community, recreates and volunteers incredibly aggressively. I believe that in order for us to be a healthy community, we need to adopt some discipline around lingering, savoring, sauntering, and dallying. For the working community, I would say, those of us who earn our living from income we receive from our jobs here, we could just take a breather rather than using our day off to clean our places, pay our bills, grocery shop, change the oil, and get this skin cancer scraped off our noses and cheeks and backs. Of course, this takes resource for people to take that full restful day off. There would be a need for some type of respite support for a measure of the constituency of our community. So play and rest being sort of the first thing on my unconventional or weird laundry list. The second thing that I would say, which we also do somewhat well here, is measured risk. I've come to believe that risk, and I'm qualifying it, prudent, measured risk is a spiritual discipline, or to use more secular language, it's a social, emotional growth tool. It helps us to develop into whole, integrated human beings. And I would say, if I surmise that play breeds creativity, then I would put to you today that risk breeds both grit and innovation. And I believe in order for us to be a healthy community, we have to have a strong measure of creativity, a good measure of grit, which a lot of us have here already, and a large measure of innovation. We need that couple who stretches to open the restaurant. We need that passionate young woman who is so emboldened in her work of serving a community that she leaves one workplace to found the advocacy group. We need generous philanthropists to help fund her work. We need the retiree to risk feeling foolish while struggling to learn Spanish in an effort to be not just bilingual, but perhaps become bicultural as well. And of course, we need the High School Alpine Club to continue to climb the Grand every year, and for the Coombs Outdoors kiddos to huck a few modest cliffs. Risk stretches us to become bigger, wider, and more open people. And bigger, wider, more open people constitute healthy community. So play and rest, one laundry list item. Measured risk, one laundry list item. Third laundry list item. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now let me say a word about this, because maybe there are a couple of you in the room that are rolling your eyes a little bit. You think that I am bringing this up because I am part of the privileged liberal elite, and that's a liberal elite talking point. That is true. I am a part of the privileged liberal elite, and I am grateful for that. However, my interaction with diversity, equity, inclusion is personal. And it comes with enormous learning and transformation of life. When my wife Cindy and I had our kiddo Jas, I was 31, she was 30. It was my 31st birthday. It was a banner day. And about a year later, Jas was diagnosed with permanent and pervasive developmental disability. What I can tell you about living with a disabled person, a developmentally disabled person, or a neurologically diverse person, as some of us say now, is that the trajectory of my life was changed, where before the values in my life were efficiency, expediency, and achievement, my life was turned upside down. And what I can tell you from this position that I hold now is that the trajectory of my life prior to my son Jas was harder and more closed. And the reverse has happened. The trajectory of my life as I solidly enter middle age is to get softer and more open. And softer and open people help, build the puzzle of creating a healthy community. That's diversity. What I would say about equity is any critically thinking adult knows that there is not a level playing field and that one size doesn't fit all. It's just our reality. Even in a pretty white, pretty privileged room, not exclusively, but vast majority so, there's so much difference in the room. And if you have lived around Jackson Hole, you hear us white people qualifying the room almost always of like, wow, this is a diverse room. And then you look around and it's like a bunch of white guys in their 50s. But if we're really thinking critically, we do know that we have a variety of experiences. We've come from so many different places. We have different occupations, different hopes and dreams, maybe also with a unified love for the mountains and the rivers and the forests. Diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Because of my son's diagnosis with a genetic disorder, Cindy and I flew to China to adopt our daughter Jade. And in that moment, and over the course of the last 15 and a half years that Jade has been with us, I am most certainly not Asian, but I am like Asian adjacent. And I have a view that I didn't have before. And I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek. I say that with full humility, and I say it with a measure of grief. Because I have not an open door and a front row seat, but an open window to the systemic racism that all people of color face here in Jackson, as well as across the United States of America and around the globe. So, laundry list, play and rest, measured risk, diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture. Couple more. The next one is a little bit vague because the industry is somewhat new, not totally new. But I think what we need here is social emotional learning centers. What do I mean by that? You know, maybe an early precursor of a social emotional learning center would be the recovery community that occupies the basement of Browse and Buy and so many other places around our community. Communities that are intent about growing humanity's emotional spectrum and access to those emotions in innovative and creative ways. Think of the work of Sarah Flitner at Becoming Jackson Whole as one representation of how we can do this. But of course, it's much more expansive than that. It's work in the school system around self-compassion, so kids in high school are not beating themselves up for not being great at Algebra 2, you know, so that grown-ups like I can have an intact personhood so I relate well to my partner, my spouse, so that our family unit is healthier. Little things like gratitude lists, not just for the sake of making sure you're grateful, but we know that that's fertilizer for generosity. We know that grateful people are more generous, and we know that a healthy community has to be generous. So social, emotional learning centers. I can assure you, and maybe this is unpopular, but I can assure you that Cowboy Up only gets us so far, and definitely not far enough. We need to become more fluent with our emotional makeup here in Jackson in order for us to have a healthy community. And sort of the final addition to the laundry list, I would say this, and I think Lori sort of touched on this a little bit, and I've heard echoes of it, but I'll just say it more explicitly. We all know that we need housing here, right? Yes, we all know that that's 1A, 1B, and 2 on the list. I have measured sometimes great optimism that we accomplish that goal. We have smart leadership here. We're well-resourced. There are problems, but we have innovative, creative thinking people who can probably solve this problem. My concern, and what I would add to the laundry list, is not just housing, but homes. We need homes in order for Jackson to be a healthy community. What I've watched, on my block, we do something in the summertime. I live on Moose Street, and we do something in the summertime from Memorial Day to Labor Day called Mondays on Moose, where we basically throw a potluck block party every single Monday of the summer. We put chairs out in the front yards of our neighbors. We share the responsibility of watching each other's kids and making sure that everyone's fed, and we have created this wonderful, somewhat intimate community of support. It's not just like, hey, like you've left your trash can out there for 3 days, can you please bring it in? It's ride to the airports, it's soup when someone's sick. And we've heard that was like the magic of Jackson in the olden days, those glory days, those golden years, and recovering that is really important. What I have noticed in my particular neighborhood is that every time in the last 2.5 years that a home has sold in my neighborhood, it's turned into a house. Most often it's occupied for anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 months out of the year. And I'm not saying that the constituency that occupies that house for that period of time doesn't have an intact family. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that there's something missing in our neighborhoods when a home becomes a house, or if we're just so focused on creating units of housing, but also not focused on building up the support and structure that we human creatures need in order to thrive and hopefully flourish. A couple more things that I want to say, and then I'm going to get down. I think one of the most important things that I would say, this relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and from the back table back there, I heard this morning representation. The conventional side of this list, which we do somewhere in between good and great, is very male, like men organize those systems pretty well, even if they don't produce the work that goes in them. But women leaders create the culture for the most part. I'm generalizing here, but women leaders create the culture on this soft side or this weird side. So I believe that we need women in leadership across the board. So small business owners, heads of nonprofits and churches like mine. And one of the things that I would say in this regard to the men in the room is we have to adjust ourselves to this reality and to this need in a way, and we need to keep our seats in certain places now. We need to watch the language that we use. One of the things that I've been careful about with my own board over the last few years is, like, when we talk about big picture and vision for St. John's Episcopal Church and, like, you know, what do you want to do before you retire, Jimmy? Wow, we've got to address Browse and Buy. We've got to rebuild Browse. We've got to put the food cupboard in there. We've got to add some housing. We've got to fix that building. It's deteriorating. We need about $10 million of endowment so these historic buildings can be cared for without the burden being passed on to future generations, because we would never build those buildings with logs if we were building them today. We would build them in some different way. And then we know that we need robust and adequate staff housing. And then I say, but that's what I want to do when I hand the keys over to the next rector of St. John's Episcopal Church, so she can be successful. Right? That's how we men can adjust the way that we speak, how we can begin to adjust our attitudes and open more women in leadership. When it comes to this conventional list and this unconventional list, it's both and. But what I mean to say clearly is the unconventional side of this formula is not add-on. They're all essential. They have to work together. So, to answer the question, are we a healthy community? Nah. Not quite. We could be. Could we be? Probably. I think we could. Do we have the resources necessary to be a healthy community? I believe absolutely we do. And where I find a lot of energy and a lot of hope is, like, look, when I got here, one of the things that I came to understand within the first 6 months was, like, everything is exaggerated here. Like, our geography is exaggerated, our ecology and attunement toward the environment is a bit exaggerated. Our recreation is very exaggerated. Our wealth disparity is exaggerated. If we, as the people of Jackson Hole, can address these problems here and create a healthy collaborative of healthy environment, healthy economy, healthy community, we can be a pilot for the rest of the country. And we know that the rest of the country struggles with these problems, but they don't struggle with them in the same exaggerated way. I am grateful for the time and the attention and for the opportunity, especially to those of you who are sitting here and listening, and to those who are also speaking. Thanks for listening.